Good morning, everybody. My name's Sarah Allen. I go by Ultrasource on all things. And I'm one of the co-chairs of CNCF SIG-Security. And here with me today is Brandon Lum, LumJJB on Twitter. And we're going to tell you a little bit about the group and what we're doing and invite you to get involved. So we'll have a short presentation and then reserve some time at the end for discussion, questions, so we can all talk about whatever you're interested in. So just going over who we are, what we're doing, and how to get involved. So our mission is really about reducing risk to the whole ecosystem. What can we do to help the CNCF and CNCF projects and even anyone getting into cloud native to make it easier to make things safer and more secure. Our focus areas, this is from our charter. We have a pretty broad charter. And what we've been doing, we're a relatively young group, is focus on the common understanding. How can we all be speaking the same languages? There's not human spoken language, but actually definition of terms. And when we say, we have auth N and auth Z and all of these different things where we have a broad set of security experts. We have a huge membership for a group that's only been around informally as the Safe Working Group since mid-2018 and as a CNCF SIG just less than a year. So just to kind of give you a sense of where we're at, we started as Secure Access for Everyone, a working group, a group of people who met at KubeCon and other places, and my co-chair JJ pulled together people from government, found me, who was interested in learning about open source security. I've done open source for a long time and security for a long time, but not the two together. And the policy working group, which came out of the Kubernetes policy SIG, merged with us because policy could exist without security, but we decided that we couldn't have security without policy. So, that we pulled together a group as CNCF established what is a SIG earlier this calendar year. Then we turned our working group proposal into a SIG proposal. We did some work on the governance, and then we had been working on these security assessments. So we finalized the process for security assessments in May. That's not all of what we do. We're going to go through a whole bunch of different things that we do. The policy group has an initiative around formal verification. We established a bunch of leadership roles because our group really does things based on what the individuals have bandwidth and passion for doing. That's within our charter. And then just recently, out of the in toto assessment came the supply chain catalog of compromises that you can see in the repo. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of these projects.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. So we're going to start with a couple things to do, and we're going to go into detail. So some of this we started initially when we had the SAFE working group, such as security assessments. And then we also have projects that kind of came out from someone in the community said, oh, I want to do something. So like one example of this is Cloud Native Security Day, where someone just said, let's do something for KubeCon. And then we had Michael and Emily volunteer, and it became a thing. So one of the things that we do, and this is kind of every meeting that we meet every Wednesdays. And we usually have some discussions, some presentations. So it's quite a wide spectrum of this. One example of presentations we have is the use cases. So at one of the KubeCons, someone came up and said, oh, I have this interesting use case where I'm using fintech for Kubernetes, where it's a highly regulated industry. I would like to share about this, right? So we had him come in, it was Lutz. He talked about his use case with Kubernetes, how they handle compliance and regulations and stuff like that, right? So we have the use cases stuff. We also have community, people from the security community talking about their security reviews. So we had a sneak peek into the Kubernetes security review by Trail of Bits. And we also had Falco talk a little bit about the security review process they did with CNCF. And we also have a couple presentations where people just talk about technology, right? So we had a few sessions on KMUS, a secret management tool, which is going to CNCF. We also had a session on Open Policy Agent and in total. So, just overview of certain technologies, and we usually have discussions around that. Oh, and also if you are interested in, if you have something to talk about and you want to share, please create an issue. How this is driven is all community-based, but we'll talk about a little bit about contributing later. So another thing that we do is in-person meetups. So this is usually at locations like this, so KubeCons, DockerCons, and in fact, we're actually meeting up tonight. So if we are going to be around the Puppy Palooza area around 7:15, so if you're interested to come hang out, grab a few drinks, grab some food, meet us there. There's an issue open there, so if you go there, you will find more details. If not, if you probably find, there'll be probably something on Twitter. So if you search for hashtag SIG-Security.
Yeah, I think there's actually a sign up so that we can make a reservation.
Yeah.
So yeah, check it out.
Yeah. So these pictures are from one of the meetups that we did in Barcelona. The meetups also can be productive. So for example, we met out at DockerCon, we talked about the security assessments and stuff like that.
I came up with a logo idea.
Yeah. All right. So another example of in-person meetup is the CloudNativeCon Day. So this happened yesterday. This was something that was proposed by the community. And so we had this day where we had a bunch of speakers talk about security, their use cases, and we also had this unconference style discussions going on. So one of the pictures here you can see is people propose a bunch of topics, and then we get into small groups. So it's a really nice discussion, and I think this is something that we're going to see hopefully again in the next KubeCon. All right, so one of the things that Sarah mentioned earlier during the overview was security assessments. So one of the things that we do in SIG-Security is we perform security assessments. So these security assessments are really to look at cloud-native projects that are security-focused or not security-focused, and to kind of do one or two things. So one is to evaluate the ecosystem and to see where this project is in terms of security in the greater ecosystem, right? And the second thing is also to look at the general security hygiene of the project. So this is a little different from the paid security audits or reviews where they really look at the details of the code, find particular bugs in it. What we do is we look at the overall design of the system. We say we have a good gauge and say, okay, does this look like a secure design? Does the mindset, is the philosophy security oriented? And then we also look at things like, oh, does the project have a good security handling system? So do they have a CI where they have vulnerability checking and things like that? Do they have a security maintainer, and do they have good response rates on those? So the security assessment, what we aim for, we had a set of guidelines that we put down. It's a 3-week thing, and it really starts with someone saying that I'd like to have a security assessment done. So we create a tracking issue, and the project lead, who's the project being assessed, will have a self-assessment done. So this will be, what's my project about? Here are some questions about security that we want answered. Which parts of the project touch data? What's the threat models and stuff like that? And then we will get into a reviews phase where the security lead will first initially look at this assessment and clarify the details. And then the review group, which is usually 3 to 5 people, will look at the parts of the assessment, and really there's going to be a back and forth conversation about, okay, what does this mean for security? Are there ways that we can improve on this? At the end of it, we get this final assessment, which is a list of recommendations about what the project can do and how the project fares in terms of security and how it can, promote it. So for example, which I'm going to cover in the next slide, which is we did 2 reviews in total in OPA. And so one of the things that came out of in total was, okay, in total covers software supply chain, but do people, we find that there's lacking in terms of education of what are some of the supply chain compromises that exist and why we should care about them, both on the development level as well as the executive level. And so this stemmed the supply chain compromise catalog, which Sarah talked about. And for OPA, it was kind of like, oh, we have a recommendation that how do you write policies well, right? It's a tricky language. How do you ensure that the policies you write actually perform what you do, and how do you tie that to compliance? Yeah, so with that, I think we can talk about that.
So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about a couple of the other projects. Landscape was a project that we did about a year ago. We had some volunteers from the community who reviewed all of the CNCF projects in the landscape and tried to bucket them and tried to figure out how do we, our goal is to divide the landscape into categories of like where everything would fit into one category. That's how you think about security, right? It's different from the landscape. It's not the functional categories, but when you're, when you've got a security product, how do you know, what's it for? And it was very challenging to come up with these categories where, you know, everything doesn't just go into one category. So what we did was, which is something we frequently do, is we put up a draft and then it sits there for a while. And I was kind of worried that it was going to just sit there indefinitely with people like saying that they didn't like it. And then just this summer, or in the last couple of months, we've had some new PRs, which are, I think these are both still open, yeah, which are proposing how to adjust it to clarify the wording. And so this is how the group works. So even if you can't come to our meetings, I'd encourage you to dive, if you're interested in security, if you want to contribute or just learn more. Learning by doing is kind of how our group works. We're mostly security experts, yet none of us knows everything about cloud, right? And that exchange of knowledge is really enriching. I've gotten a lot out of the experience of being part of the group, and a lot of it is this like together describing what this stuff is, has been, I think, really interesting and will bear fruit in terms of helping educate the non-security experts. We also had personas when we first, our initial personas were, you know, developer, operator, administrator, and end user, which we define differently than the CNCF, because the CNCF defines end user as the end user who implements cloud native stuff. But then they don't have, that sort of takes over the word for the end user who uses the application that is deployed on cloud native. And from a security standpoint, of course, we have to worry about the people who use the cloud native systems. So since the last KubeCon, Christian Kemper introduced the platform implementer persona. That when we're implementing cloud native platforms, we have a set of other concerns. And so each of these personas has a bunch of use cases so that as we develop systems, we can think through the security use cases for those different personas. And this is helpful to the different members of the group. And we hope also for people outside of the group. And then the last project I want to go over is the supply chain initiative. So this is something that has always been a problem. Like you could always have had a threat to the supply chain. But before the fast moving, you know, deployments of cloud, before this significant rise in dependence on open source, supply chain wasn't that much of an issue. But now it's common for a project to just suck in 1,000 dependencies at once and frequently not review the changes from one thing to another. And so Santiago Torres, who's the maintainer of Intoto, contributed this list of compromises that he had cataloged in coming up with Intoto, and then there's enthusiasm in the group to categorize it so that we can really understand how we think about the supply chain threats and also start to investigate, are there projects to the left of Intoto and to the right of, like, Intoto covers one part, an important part of the supply chain, but there's other aspects that are actually, they're more difficult than I think they should be. And there may be opportunity either, discover or instigate some projects in those areas.
All right. So how do we get involved with SIG-Security? So we have everything that we do is in GitHub. So if you just go to our GitHub page, there's a bunch of links that will be helpful. We meet every Wednesdays at 10 a.m. PST. The details is going to be in the slides later. So everything's going to be in GitHub. Whatever we talked about, there's going to be issue or pull request or folder in GitHub that it's going to be there. So if you're interested in any of this, you can go to our GitHub repository. And also, we have a Slack channel in the CNCF Slack. So you can come by and drop us a message. So there's a lot of information that's out there. And so we have this new member section on our landing page that basically tells you all you have to do. So what's our mailing list? There's our Slack team. What's the code of conduct, stuff like that, how to get involved, and once you're part of the community, how to add yourself to the community. And I think one of the things that we really promote in the group is really if you have an idea, if you have something that you want to do, we encourage anyone to do it, even though you can't come to the meetings. And so we set up a bunch of templates for issues. So for example, we have right now a presentation. So if you want, if you have an idea for a presentation, if you want to see a certain presentation or a project or technology, you can create an issue there. And then we have these things called proposals and suggestions. So suggestions are for things that you're interested in, that you want to see happen, but you don't necessarily have the resources to do it. So you can put out a suggestion saying, oh, I'm interested in this topic. This is kind of what it covers. And if there's people in the community that are interested in this, which has happened before, then we'll pick it up as a project, and then we'll proceed with it. We also have proposals where it's, I have an idea and I want to work on it. So, and
proposals are more likely to happen, so.
Yeah.
Think about things you want to do.
Yeah, so that takes the initial predicament away. It's like, who's going to work on it, and how do we get around to doing it? So proposals like the supply chain was a proposal by Santiago. I think Cloud Native Security Day was a proposal by Michael.
Yeah, it was originally by Michael. Yeah.
Yeah. So we also have a security assessment. So if you are a project in the CNCF, or you are thinking about submitting a project for a sandbox in CNCF, then if it's security related or if it's not security related, you can submit a request for a security assessment and then fill up the self-assessment, and then we'll go through the process. Yeah, we are still looking for first 5 security assessments that we do. We are 2 down. I believe the next is Falco, and we like to see some non-security projects as well.
Yeah, so we're basically, we have a process, and we're sort of testing the process with 5 security assessments. So like Brendan said, we had 2. Our goal is to have the 4 of the 5 be are probably going to be security-related things, but we want at least one of them to be a non-security project, so that we have the sort of experience of how do we talk through, like maybe our templates aren't quite right for non-security, like if the project's focus isn't security, but there's still threats and there's still concerns about that.
Yeah. Okay. So last but not least, here's information on how to get involved. We have a deep dive tomorrow at 5:20. This is going to be done by JJ and Zipeng, who I don't think is here. But if you want to get more involved, if you want to find out more about what's going on in the assessments and things like that, do drop by tomorrow and find out more. The Slack information is here, and all this information that's over here, if you go to our GitHub page, CNCF/SIG-Security, all of this will be there. Thank you.
So now we have, thank you. So now you have an opportunity, if you have questions or things that you things that you wonder if the group would do, or comments about cloud native security.
Hi, my name is Kapil. I heard that the incubation process for projects going to CNCF changed in the last few months, and they're now going through the SIG, to the CNCF SIGs first before they go to the talk. And I'm just trying to understand, like it seems like your project assessment stuff is actually generic. It's not per se security related. It's just project good health, the badge app, et cetera. Is it, like, I'm just trying to understand what that process is. Is that a proposal? Is that a presentation? Is that an ask for security assessment to go through?
So the process with the CNCF onboarding is definitely evolving. So our assessments are security assessments. So it looks at the security health of the project. There's like, what is the project? Because you can't really do a security assessment if you don't know that. But then there's a whole section on threat modeling, like what's its security posture, and then like kind of the details of like, is it implementing security well? And for sandbox and even for incubation, the bar, like people expect to come out of the process with a to-do list, and that's a good thing, right? And then we have a conversation about how that should be on your roadmap and so forth. And so one of the things that we're talking with our TOC liaisons, basically every SIG has 1 or 2 TOC liaisons. So Liz Rice and Joe Beta are out, like we go to the TOC meetings, but they are specifically responsible for our SIG. And so we've thought about like, well, there may be a briefer due diligence that they delegate to us when there's a security related process, which is just, does this seem like a credible cloud native thing? Like one of the great debates is, I may be overstating the largeness of it, but one of the questions is, what is cloud native, right? Like some things like are really clear, like in our charter, we're like, well, spam filtering. Like it's not really cloud native, it's like phishing attacks. Like there's a whole bunch of things that are seriously security things, but they're not really different in cloud native. But then there's other things that are kind of on the edge, right? And things that are becoming cloud native. And so the does it belong in the CNCF is more about like, does it do a cloud native specific thing? Like, does it enable cloud native in some way? And so the due diligence process may be briefer, like, okay, we'll just have 1 or 2 people like write something up and be like, okay, like more like do some homework for the TOC, which used to be done before SIGs existed. There's these TOC contributors. So like anybody can sign up to be a TOC contributor, and that just means that the TOC might call on you and be like, hey, could you do a thing to help us out? So it's expanding the bandwidth of the TOC. Does that help?
It does.
Yeah, also, if you want to be involved with doing a security review, we are also looking for security reviewers.
Oh.
Thanks. This actually isn't so much a question as a quick comment. I actually lead the CII Best Practices Badge project. So, and the CII Best Practices Badge isn't specific to the CNCF. It does have things beyond security because if the project fails, it's probably not going to be secure either. But it does focus on security. On the other hand, the badge project doesn't do a lot of things that the SIG-Security things do. So hopefully we're synergistic and so on.
Yeah, in fact, we do look at the status of the badge, and one of the things that we try to do is like the answers to the questions in the badging process are sometimes more important than I got to gold or silver, whatever, right? Like there's the lowest level where kind of every project should be at, and then after that, depending on the project, sometimes there are things that are in the gold category that are more important than the silver category, and so we really look at what is the project for? What's it doing? But it's a good like set of things. That's one of the ways that we assess the project. Is there a question over there?
Hey, I was just curious, when do you apply security assessments to projects? Like, is it something that's sort of going to be standard for everything that wants to join CNCF, or is it more ad hoc right now?
So I'll take that. So yeah, there's been also a lot of discussion on that. Basically, until we do this first 5, we don't want to make it required because we're still validating the process. And our goal is to be able to do an assessment in 3 weeks, which we haven't hit yet. So until we can maybe it's 4, whatever it is, until we can tell a project it's going to be this much work, it's going to take this much time, we can tell the TOC that, we're not quite ready for it to be required. But the expectation is that people will go through that the assessment will be, in the future, will be a precondition to the audit. Because what it does is it says, this is what this project is trying to do. And then that makes the audit easier, right? And then this is the risk profile of the project, which kind of helps the whole community understand it. And then the projects who've gone through it have found that it's helpful in kind of steering their roadmap along just this security axis.
So my question is very similar. On your set of the tasks of what you do, I didn't notice any sort of proactive outreach to the other projects. And I think you just answered part of it, which is you can't really scale until you have part of that. But what other things are you doing in terms of policy and kind of the broad view into the community to help all the projects or all the ecosystem with their security level of maturity?
So I think that right now the focus is around education, and we're kind of a little internally focused in the SIG because we're newer. So all of the material is available just on the repo, and you kind of have to dig in there and that's kind of intentional because there are some holes there, right? There are things that we all think are important, but they're not addressed at all in our materials because it's just, there's bandwidth concerns.
Yeah, I think there's some discussion also around the landscape that stems out of that, and they're like, okay, so one of the things that came out was authorization identity, and should that be something that's a call out to another project, or is it something that every project should really focus on? Everyone should have something that is related to authorization identity. And the discussion is still going on, but these actually come up, and there's a lot of good and valid points on both sides. So I think part of what we're doing is we try to also reconcile that a little bit.
And really the first step that we're planning to do is we're planning to do a microsite that is like, you're not part of the group, but you're interested in cloud native security. And that the first content will be, over the last couple of years, we've had a number of presentations. Like if you look at all of our meetings that are all on video, 90% of them are not, it would take a long time to slog through them to get the information that's really awesome. But the presentations are gems. And so we're gonna take those presentations, and the CNCF has produced transcripts so that there's highlights of those presentations. So at first, we're gonna just say, okay, this is the stuff that we've been doing for ourselves, these small set of security experts in the community. Now we'll echo that out to the community, and then as we sort of formalize what we're doing, we'll then have more resources for the community.
Justin.
Was there another question?
Justin.
Oh.
Yeah.
A member of SIG-Security joins us. Justin Cormack.
No, I just want to say in response to that as well, I think we're not specifically entirely focused on projects as well. I mean, a large amount of the stuff we do is trying to help users understand how to use projects. That's part of the goal of the assessment. So we're kind of resource for that. And then we have, broader themes, like the policy working group had this whole strand on use of formal methods and things like that, So there are sort of bits of tooling rather than everything being specifically focused on the CNCF projects. It's a kind of broader focus. But we're really happy to engage. If projects want to come to us and engage, that's great as well.
Thank you, sir. This may be a bit out of scope, but with respect to not just, say, developers or maintainers of individual projects, but downstream consumers, so rather than implementers, customers that are using it, is it appropriate to direct them to the SIG-Security group, or would that just overwhelm them, like treating it like a support desk? Like if an implementer is trying to do, say, an app and they're essentially using all CNCF components, is it appropriate to point them your way to sort of be further directed to an authority on the topic?
So we do have a lot of discussions that go across the stack. I think we do have quite a significant amount of discussions which are end users and how do you use security. So this especially comes in the use case presentations and discussions. I think the security assessment documents that are produced from the security assessments act as a good way to kind of have a first introduction into a particular project and kind of the security implications. But this is the basic. It kind of lays it out really nicely about what the project is, what are a few of the high levels of security considerations, and then it's a good place for someone to take it and go dig further into a particular area that may be more of a concern for them.
I mean, yeah, we've had discussions with people like the financial services user group, end user group, for example, who are obviously heavily involved with security. So we've done some cross presentations with them, and people have become quite involved because they have a lot of security requirements and they want to work out how to work with each other to share work and things like that. So there's a whole kind of areas like that where we've interacted with end users directly. But yeah, we're not strictly a help desk, but there are lots of people. I mean, it's a great resource of people who know about lots of different areas of security. So if you actually want to ask a help desk question, it's not a terrible place to try.
I think the main thing is, if you are not a security expert and you want to roll up your sleeves and help document the answer to the question you asked, come on in, the water's great, right? It's really that if for people who want to learn by doing, and we've had people who don't have any expertise security reviewing, and we've kind of created a path where somebody can act as a security reviewer. We make sure that we have at least 3 experts, and we kind of balance the expertise around background. But then somebody could gain that background by participating in the security reviews, so that people can kind of level up by doing the work of the group. Justin, would you mind taking the?
So I don't know a lot about the SIG group. I was wondering, are you guys responsible for the vulnerability and incident response process? And
no.
Okay.
So we do in the security assessment make sure that the project has one. And like one of the things that we're doing is trying to amplify when we think a project would benefit from having more companies participate in that response, or more people on their security. If it's a widely used project, but only one company is on the security team, we're trying to figure out ways that we can amplify the things that would really make a difference if companies participated, because we know that companies have many, many dependencies, but then some of these are, need particular attention. But we are not, it's an all volunteer thing, everybody has day jobs, so we can't really respond in any quick way to any particular issue.
And along those lines, you'd mentioned that you'd been looking at supply chain, like cataloging supply chain vulnerabilities. Is that publicly published somewhere? Like, is there a website for it or something?
It's in the repo.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's like one of the things that's going to go up on the microsite. But yeah, but right now, everything that will be on the microsite is in the repo. Some of it's buried in issues, but it's all there.
Yeah, if you can't find anything, just drop by the Slack channel, give us a ping. All right, I think we are out of time. Yeah, we are out of time.
Oh yeah, and we'll stick around later afterwards if you have any questions that didn't get answered, or if you want to get involved and want to know where to start. Thanks, everybody.